Millionaire finds his maid and her son abandoned in a dump. What he learns breaks his heart. Rain lashed against the tinted windows of Alexander Thorne's Rolls-Royce, blurring the manicured lawns of his gated estate into streaks of green. He was returning from a tedious board meeting, mind already on his evening scotch, when a detour forced him down a forgotten service road bordering the city's sprawling landfill. That's when he saw them. Not trash, people. Huddled beneath a sagging tarp stretched between two rusted car husks, a figure rocked back and forth. As his car slowed, Alexander's breath hitched. It was Maria, his Maria, the quiet, efficient maid who'd polished his silver and folded his shirts with meticulous care for 5 years. And clinging to her threadbare shawl, eyes wide and hollow in a face too thin for his 3-year-old frame, was her son, Leo. Alexander's world tilted. Maria had simply vanished 3 months ago. No notice, no explanation. He'd been mildly irritated, inconvenienced. He'd assumed she had found better pay elsewhere. Now, seeing her here in this desolate wasteland of rotting garbage and despair, shame burned hotter than any boardroom humiliation. He stepped out, the mud sucking at his Italian loafers. "Maria!" His voice cracked. She flinched, shielding Leo with her body, eyes wide in terror that quickly turned to resigned shame. "Mr. Thorne, please, go." But he couldn't. He knelt, ignoring the filth soaking into his trousers. "What happened? Why are you here?" The story spilled out in broken whispers, punctuated by Leo's soft whimpers. Her husband, Leo's father, had been killed in a construction accident. The meager insurance payout vanished instantly, swallowed by hospital bills for Leo's sudden severe asthma attack. Evicted, with nowhere to turn, too proud to beg her wealthy employer for charity she feared he wouldn't give, Maria had fled. The dump offered shelter no one else wanted. She scavenged food from bins, washed Leo in polluted puddles, slept with one eye open against rats and worse. Leo's cough, a constant wet rattle, was worsening without medicine. Alexander listened, his carefully constructed world of privilege crumbling. He saw not just poverty, but the crushing weight of his indifference. He'd never asked about her life beyond his mansion's walls. He'd signed her paychecks without a second thought, blind to the fragile reality they barely sustained. Her silence hadn't been ingratitude, it had been the silence of drowning. "Get in the car," he commanded, his voice thick. "Both of you, now!" Maria hesitated, fear warring with exhaustion. Leo just stared, his small hand clutching his mother's ragged sleeve. Alexander didn't wait. He gently lifted Leo, the boy felt frighteningly light, and placed him in the pristine back seat. He helped Maria up, her trembling palpable. As he drove away from the stench and despair, Alexander made a silent vow in the rearview mirror. Never again. The next hours were a blur of action, fueled by guilt and a dawning, profound responsibility. His private physician was summoned to his penthouse. Leo was bathed in warm, clean water, wrapped in soft towels, and given life-saving nebulizer treatments. Maria, washed and dressed in borrowed clothes that hung off her frame, watched her son breathe easier for the first time in months, tears streaming silently down her face. Alexander sat with them in his vast, silent living room, a space that suddenly felt cold and empty compared to the raw humanity before him. He learned Leo's asthma was triggered by the dump's toxic air. He learned Maria had walked miles each day searching for scraps, terrified to leave Leo alone. He learned she had sold her wedding ring for a single inhaler that ran out weeks ago. The truth that broke his heart wasn't just their suffering. It was realizing he was part of the system that allowed it. His wealth, his comfort, existed in a bubble that rendered people like Maria invisible until they collapsed at his feet. Her loyalty, her dignity and silence shamed him to his core. "Maria," he said, his voice rough, "you have a home here, for as long as you need it. Leo's medical care? It's covered. Everything is covered." Maria shook her head, tears falling onto Leo's sleeping face. "Mr. Thorne, we cannot. It's too much." "It's not enough," Alexander interrupted, the words surprising even himself. "It's the bare minimum of what I owe you, what we owe you." He looked at Leo, his small chest rising and falling steadily now. "Stay. Let me help properly." He didn't just offer shelter, he became fiercely involved. He found Maria a therapist specializing in trauma. He enrolled Leo in a top pediatric pulmonology program. He quietly paid off the predatory debts that had trapped her. He even started a foundation in Leo's name, funding clean housing and healthcare access for families teetering on the edge. But the real change was in Alexander. The boardrooms felt hollow. The endless acquisitions seemed meaningless. He began visiting community centers, listening to stories like Maria's, stories he'd been blind to. He used his influence not just for profit, but for policy changes, advocating for better worker protections and accessible health care. One evening, months later, Alexander found Maria and Leo on his balcony overlooking the city lights. Leo, cheeks now rounder, was laughing as he chased fireflies Maria had captured in a jar. Maria watched him, a peace in her eyes Alexander had never seen before. "He calls you Uncle Alex now," she said softly, a tentative smile touching her lips. Alexander looked at the boy who had crawled out of a dump and into his heart. The boy whose suffering had shattered his complacency and rebuilt him into someone human. The city glittered below, a monument to wealth he once thought defined him. Now he knew true wealth wasn't in bank accounts, but in the quiet courage of a mother's love, and the responsibility that came with seeing it. "He can call me whatever he likes," Alexander murmured, his throat tight, "as long as he never has to sleep in the rain again." The dump hadn't just held Maria and Leo, it had held the buried truth of his own privilege, and digging it up had saved them all. If you believe in kindness and second chance, please like, share, and subscribe to ACA Storytales for more emotional stories. Your support helps us spread hope to millions. Thanks for watching.